77 WABC and Bergen Newbridge Medical Center honor the life of legendary broadcaster and our friend, Ernie Anastas.
Hi, it's Ernie Anastas. You know, your thoughts can affect how you feel. Bergen Newbridge Medical Center is the largest hospital in New Jersey, providing comprehensive, equitable, compassionate, and high-quality emergency inpatient and outpatient medical care, plus mental health services and substance use disorder treatment. The Bergen Newbridge team can address your total health needs in one convenient location. Call 201-225-7130 for an appointment or newbridgehealth.org.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone, and I'm your host, the one and only Roger Stone. Well, in a federal courtroom in Washington, D.C., 31-year-old Cole Thomas Allen pleaded not guilty to charges tied to the April 25th shooting incident at the White House Correspondents Association dinner, which I saw as an attempted assassination of President Donald Trump and many of his top cabinet officials. The dinner was packed with roughly 2,600 elites, but it also included President Trump, First Lady Melania Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, countless administrative officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and of course, the many people calling themselves journalists. Prosecutors say that Allen rushed past security armed with a 12-gauge shotgun, a .38 pistol, and multiple knives before firing towards law enforcement. Secret Service agents was hit in his bulletproof vest by buckshot, was treated, and was released. No attendees were killed or injured thanks to the fast response of the Secret Service and the police. Allen, a California native with degrees from Caltech and Cal State in Dominguez Hills, has no prior criminal record, but investigators say he had expressed anti-Trump views, had donated to Kamala Harris's presidential campaign, had attended protests, and sent a disturbing manifesto-style email shortly before the attack. Why are they continuing to say that they can't establish a motive? The evidence clearly points to politically motivated violence, not some random act. Allen now faces charges including attempted assassination of the president, assaulting a federal officer with a deadly weapon, and a firearms violation. If convicted on the lead count, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. But a few questions remain, though. How was the security so lax at the White House Correspondents' dinner, considering the number of noteworthy and important people who were in attendance, including those in succession to the presidency of the United States? Why did the Secret Service drop the ball again, just as they did in Butler, Pennsylvania, where the president was shot but survived? Were they aware that this lunatic was going to show up? Was Cole Allen in touch with any federal agents or federal assets in the lead up to the shooting? Unfortunately, very much like the situation in Butler, Pennsylvania, we will probably never know the answers to these legitimate questions. It's always a lone gunman. And then we get move along, nothing here to see, every single time. Just like the assassination of JFK, the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan, and my book about that will be out shortly, there continue to be more questions than answers. Well, Pennsylvania Democrat Senator John Fetterman, once again breaking with the far-left fever gripping his party, calling out Democrats for turning anti-Trump rage into a so-called political platform, appealing on Bill Maher's show and writing a new Washington Post op-ed. Fetterman, who I think would be more comfortable in the Republican Party than the party of today's progressive Democrats, said Democrats simply cannot define themselves as the opposite of President Donald Trump. He criticized candidates who are, in his words, literally running on profanity-laced anti-Trump messaging. He called it absurd, saying the country needs a better way forward. Fetterman also defended positions that used to be common sense in both parties, such as secure borders, support for Israel, avoiding government shutdowns, and deporting illegal immigrants who commit violent crimes. Fetterman backed practical security upgrades for major White House events, saying he personally witnessed the danger during the recent incident where the far-left extremists attacked the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Fetterman said America was lucky that people were not killed and the country needs safer venues, dismissing outrage over a proposed White House ballroom as unserious. The Pennsylvania senator also blasted the left's growing comfort with socialism, yes, and even communism, warning that anyone who thinks socialism is the answer is, in his words, a moron. Well, the senator called it like it is. Fetterman then turned his fire on the media, condemning the 24-hour news cycle that turns opinions into supposed facts. He said that the opinions are not news. Recent polling shows the Democrats in Pennsylvania are turning on Fetterman for telling it like it is. President Trump has offered Fetterman to jump ship over to the Republican Party. Today, I believe he would handily win a Republican primary for the U.S. Senate. That seems to me like a stretch, but even if Fetterman were to leave the Democrat Party, or if a Democrat Party were to leave him by dumping him in a primary, he of course would have the option of going independent, which would almost surely elect a Republican. That would hurt the far-left Democrats immeasurably and perhaps inspire others to jump off that sinking ship as well. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is making a case that should resonate with both America First conservatives and strong supporters of Israel. The leader of the Jewish state is saying it is time to completely phase out U.S. financial aid to the Jewish state. In a new interview with CBS News, Netanyahu says he wants Israel to draw down to zero the financial component of American military support, which currently totals $3.8 billion a year. His proposed timeline is to begin now and complete the process over the upcoming decade. That is the right message at the right time. America is drowning in debt, taxpayers are stretched thin, and voters are increasingly skeptical of foreign aid, even to our closest Democratic allies. A serious America First policy says allies should be strong, sovereign, but also capable of defending themselves without becoming dependent or overly reliant on the U.S. taxpayer. Uncle Sam is tired of being a sucker. And from a pro-Israel perspective, Netanyahu is right as well. Israel is a modern military and technological powerhouse. It has world-class intelligence, it has cyber capabilities, its own missile defense, and an economy built on innovation. A stronger, more independent Israel would be harder for critics in Washington to manipulate and less vulnerable to political hostage-taking from future anti-Israel majorities in Congress. It could also be argued that the financial support from the U.S. is an encroachment on Israelis' national sovereignty. Of course, the United States and Israel should remain close strategic partners. Intelligence sharing, weapons coordination, missile defense research, and coordination against Iran are all still of the utmost importance. But we can do all of this without sending billions in foreign aid. Netanyahu's argument is correct. Israel should stand on its own 2 feet. America should protect its own taxpayers, and both nations should cooperate from a position of strength. That is America First, and it is pro-Israel as well. Meanwhile, with Americans furious over soaring gas prices, Energy Secretary Chris Wright says the Trump administration is open to all ideas to bring relief at the pump, including temporarily suspending the federal gas tax. Secretary Wright told the press this past weekend that the administration supports measures that lower costs for working families. He pointed to releases from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, coordination with other nations, and revised EPA rules to help refiners produce more gasoline. President Trump said he supports taking off the gas tax for a quote-unquote period of time, then phasing it back in once prices fall again. The federal gas tax is now at 18.4 cents per gallon, with 24% cents per gallon for diesel. This would provide temporary relief to help Americans while the situation with Iran is wrapped up and things stabilize. The bigger burden in many states, however, comes from state fuel taxes, especially in Democrat-run states. So, for example, California leads the nation with 70.9 cents per gallon, although Governor Gavin Newsom refuses to let any refinery operate in the Golden State. Then when it comes to taxes, it's followed by Illinois and Washington. Michigan's taxes also among the highest, yet Governor Gretchen Whitmer has endorsed federal tax relief while refusing to cut her own state tax. Some Republican-led states have moved faster. Indiana Governor Mike Braun extended tax fuel relief, cutting nearly 60% per gallon, 60 cents per gallon, pardon me. Georgia and Utah have taken steps to reduce the burden. The lesson is clear. Washington can help, but states must act too. American families need cheaper energy, and Democrats must be put on the defensive if they're unwilling to provide that relief. Democrats can suspend their state gas taxes and slash prices for gas for Americans instantly. If they refuse to do so, they deserve the blame for these price hikes. Utah may be the next battleground state. The nationwide fight over redistricting over State Supreme Justice after State Supreme Justice Deanna Hagan recently resigned amid substantial controversy. Hagan had joined the Utah Supreme Court opinion in the League of Women Voters versus Utah versus the Utah State Legislature, a ruling that forced Republican-led state to withdraw its congressional map before the 2026 elections. Utah is currently represented by Republicans in all 4 congressional districts, but the court's decision could create one Democrat-favorable seat centered around Salt Lake City. The case stemmed from a 2018 ballot initiative creating an independent redistricting commission for congressional districts. Utah lawmakers later passed a 2020 law making that commission advisory, but the courts have said the legislature lacked the authority to do that. Hagan later recused herself after leaked text messages alleged that she had an affair with the attorney David Raymond, who represented plaintiffs in the redistricting case. Hagan would eventually resign her position after widespread public outrage over her apparent betrayal. In her resignation letter to Governor Spencer Cox, Hagan cited scrutiny of her private life and the toll on her family. Her departure has put additional scrutiny on the Supreme Court to revisit this issue. There's no reason why Democrats should be gifted a seat because a fraudulent, independent redistricting commission just wants to give them one. As the lawmakers of Indiana found out, there are major electoral consequences when Republicans neglect to use their power at their disposal to push back against Democrats. Those Indiana Republicans who resisted a redistricting plan supported by President Trump were wiped out in the Republican primaries only days ago. So it's time for Utah to redraw their maps, for Utah Republicans to do whatever is in their power to deny Democrats a congressional seat, and for the public to accept no excuses as to why this cannot be done. Seeing some of the most interesting videos I've ever seen in politics, the Los Angeles mayoral race is actually drawing national attention as a man named Spencer Pratt, who's a reality TV star best known from MTV's The Hills, actually gains visibility and some traction after viral campaign videos and a closely watched debate with Mayor Karen Bass, a self-avowed follower of Fidel Castro, and council member Nithmaya Rahman. Pratt has framed his campaign around public safety, homelessness, taxes, and frustration with City Hall, but his online presence has helped turn a candidacy once thought to be a fringe into a major threat to the political establishment. Why? Because Pratt is both interesting and he's entertaining, much like Donald Trump. Recent reporting shows that Bass remains the front runner, but Pratt has moved into second place in some polling, with Rahman also competing for a runoff spot. The May 6th debate appears to have been a turning point. NBC Los Angeles reported that that event brought the 3 candidates onto the same stage. An NBC4 online viewer poll showed a large majority of voters saying that Pratt won that debate. If you haven't seen these videos, by all means go online, go to X, and check them out. They are hysterical. Bass has since withdrawn from a televised May 13th mayoral forum hosted by the Plague of Women Voters, probably that's the League of Women Voters, and the Pat Brown Institute, with her campaign saying she would be in the capital city of Sacramento seeking funds for housing, homelessness, and major event planning. Evidently, there are no TV studios in Sacramento. Of course, those are pathetic excuses. She is so scared of getting humiliated by Pratt. His campaign is also benefiting from this viral AI-generated ads, outside attention, and support from outside figures including Jeannie Buss and Joe Rogan. It's clear that Pratt has his finger on the pulse of the new media, and this is a wonder to behold. Check it out. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to Stone Zone. Don't go away, because we'll be right back.
The following is a paid issue advertisement.
If the vote count is accurate, then how come the number of voters is different? And if it's not accurate, then why was it certified? We are suing Letitia James and the New York State Board of Elections for a conspiracy against fundamental rights. This is not about who won. It's not about what party. It's about the fact that they don't care about your rights.
Paid for by realamerica.vote, a DBA of New York Citizens Audit Civic Fund, Incorporated.
Go to realamerica.vote.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And you're diving head first back into the Stone Zone. Well, The Department of Justice says hundreds of children were located and more than 350 alleged child sex offenders were arrested in April through Operation Iron Pursuit, a nationwide crackdown targeting child sexual exploitation. According to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of New York, the operation ran from April 1st through April 30th and involved all 56 FBI field offices, along with U.S. attorneys' offices across the country. Officials say more than 200 children were located during this effort. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche delivered a direct warning to predators, saying the DOJ is coming for them and that sexual exploitation of minors has no place in American society. FBI Director Kash Patel has said the Bureau is working to restore public trust and move law enforcement resources closer to the communities they serve, including shifting more than 1,000 FBI agents and intelligence analysts out of Washington into the field. Isn't it refreshing to have a Department of Justice and an FBI that is more concerned with cracking down on the exploitation and abuse of children than pursuing parents who are concerned about the curricular being forced on their children in the public schools? Following Operation Iron Pursuit and related efforts, authorities also reported seizures of drugs and firearms. The announcement follows other law enforcement actions, including ICE's report that hundreds of illegal alien child sex offenders were arrested in Houston during President Trump's first year back in office. So the message from the Trump administration is abundantly clear. Law enforcement resources are now focused on protecting children and families, removing violent predators from the streets, and backing the agents who do the dangerous work. Democrats preferred to have federal agents hunting down January 6 protesters, setting up fake frame jobs over Russian collusion that never really existed, spying on and arresting those outside abortion clinics who were guilty of praying, and monitoring parents who went to school board meetings because they were concerned about the curriculum being forced on their children. That's the difference between this administration and Joe Biden's days, and it's why I think Donald Trump's critics who say the 2026 election will be a disaster have another thing coming. Meanwhile, the president himself is taking new action to support American families, announcing an organization called moms.gov. It's a new one-stop resource for expectant mothers and parents facing difficulty or unexpected pregnancies. The Secretary of Health and Human Service, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., warns that America is facing a serious fertility crisis. Kennedy said that male teenagers today have roughly half the sperm count men had in 1970, calling the trend an existential crisis for the country. The Trump administration says moms.gov will connect mothers and fathers with pregnancy centers, nutrition guidance, and other resources designed to protect mothers, children, and the health of the American family. President Trump also announced a new Department of Labor proposal to create a fertility benefit option for employers. The rule would allow businesses to offer fertility benefits outside of normal health insurance plans, with the goal of making treatments such as in vitro more affordable for couples trying to have children. Remember when Democrats tried to say that Donald Trump would outlaw in vitro pregnancies? Yet another lie. President Trump says the effort is about helping families grow and giving parents more support at one of the most important moments in time. This is why he will go down in history as one of the greatest presidents of all time. I'm Roger Stone. Listen to the Stone Zone. Don't go away because we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And you're now re-entering the Stone Zone. Well, it looks like Europe is getting ready to throw in the towel on the entire Ukrainian project. The European Union is reportedly preparing for possible future talks with Russia and their leader, Vladimir Putin, as they're forced to admit that their policy of subsidizing Ukraine to keep heinous war going has utterly failed. According to the Financial Times, European leaders are beginning to acknowledge the reality that at some point they're going to have to speak directly with Moscow about security on the continent. Speaking about the war effort after Russia's Victory Day events, Putin said, "I think that matter is coming to an end." But he made it clear he would only meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky after peace terms had already been settled, describing such a meeting as the final point, not the negotiation itself. European Council President Antonio Costa said that the EU would speak with Russia only at the right moment, meaning they're still stalling because they don't want to admit failure. Plus, they want to continue to get the multi-billion-dollar subsidies that this war has brought the NATO nations. An EU official put it bluntly off the record, saying that Europe will eventually need to talk to Russia because Russian security is at stake. President Trump has considered pressing NATO allies to take responsibility for their own defense, calling the alliance a paper tiger, and moving to withdraw 5,000 U.S. troops from Germany. It's ironic because when I first urged President Donald Trump to run, he was just Donald Trump then, the New York developer, back in 1988, we made a fateful trip to New Hampshire where he spoke to the Portsmouth, New Hampshire Chamber of Commerce. And in that speech, he called out the fact that our NATO allies have not been paying their fair share. Talk about continuity. In his first term, Donald Trump forced our NATO allies to cough up $650 million in past due dues that they owed for their NATO protection. Now, in response to the latest moves, European governments are accelerating discussions about deeper military coordination independent of Washington. Additionally, Trump backed a 3-day ceasefire in Ukraine, which appeared to hold through the weekend, creating a possible opening for a larger deal. President Trump is forcing Europe now to face reality. It's shown amidst the Iranian conflict that the NATO partnership is strictly a one-way street. Many of our NATO allies would not allow us to use the airspace over their countries. In some cases, our bases built in their countries were not allowed to be used by the United States in their assault on Iran. The U.S. gives everything and gets nothing. That's the story of NATO. President Trump will not forget how Europe did not have our backs when it mattered most. Now the U.S. is not going to have NATO's back as they elongate the Ukraine-Russian conflict. They can only delay the inevitable, in my opinion, for just so long. Meanwhile, New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also known as AOC, is fueling speculations about her national ambitions. Widely rumored to be a 2028 Democrat presidential candidate, AOC told a Chicago audience that her goal is bigger than just winning the presidency. Asked by Democratic strategist David Axelrod, who was the man who created Barack Obama, about a possible 2028 White House run, AOC said her ambition was not simply a title or a seat. Instead, she says her ambition is to change this country, referring to her aims to implement single-payer health care, a so-called living wage, workers' rights, and women's rights as lasting goals. AOC said that presidents, senators, and House members come and go, but major policy changes can last forever. With this rhetoric, I think AOC essentially is peacocking, but she's also exposing herself. Her unabashed advocacy for socialism would be laughable if its specter were not so very real. Government-run health care, sweeping wage mandates, expanded federal power are not campaign slogans. They are long-term efforts to remake the American economy and society. Their effort to spy on us, to know everything about us, and to maintain that in massive federal databases is all part of Big Brother's plan. And the reason why the Democrats are allowing infinity migrants to flood into the country from the third world is because they're deadly serious about imposing their goals upon all of us, and they make no bones about ripping the Constitution to shreds in order to accomplish their noble experiment. In other words, they intend to make all of these illegals who've entered the country U.S. citizens, so we have a permanent majority that cannot be defeated in an election. AOC's comments come as Democrats search for their next national standard bearer, with names like Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Pete Buttigieg, Gretchen Whitmer, Josh Shapiro, and others being discussed for 2028. Pardon me if I can't stop laughing. Even if AOC does not run for president, she and her far-left cohorts will be heavily influencing the agenda of whoever is their candidate, driving their candidate away from the center and to the far left. Democrats are held hostage to the fanatical socialists in their midst. They now dominate their party. The party of John F. Kennedy, Harry Truman, even Franklin Roosevelt, that party is long gone. The word moderate Democrat is an oxymoron. That is why they must be defeated, and at the end, voting Republican, as tough as it may be for some to stomach in certain cases, will be a matter of national survival. Meanwhile, Hillsdale College has honored the late Turning Point USA founder, my good friend Charlie Kirk, and his wife Erica Kirk, Saturday, awarding both of them honorary degrees in public service during a commencement at the Bierman Center in Hillsdale. Hillsdale College President Larry P. Arnn had announced the honor last September at Charlie Kirk's memorial service, recognizing the Kirk's commitment to faith, freedom, education, and the future of the American Republic. Erica Kirk delivered the commencement address, offering graduates a message rooted in courage, family, duty, and love of country. She shared a personal story from the couple's honeymoon, recalling Charlie's determination to finish online Hillsdale lectures from Dr. Arnn, even while he was away on honeymoon with his new bride. Her message to graduates was direct and countercultural. She urged them to marry young, build strong friendships, and refuse to conform to a world that often mocks traditional values. Speaking to men, she called on them to provide, to lead, and to anchor their families with strength. Speaking to women, she praised the high calling of nurturing, building, and shaping lives with wisdom and endurance. Erica Kirk warned graduates the world will challenge and distort what they know to be true, but she reminded them that their duty is not to imitate the culture. She said, if you want to make a difference in the world, it is very hard to do when you just look like you tried, pardon me. Let me do this again. If you want to make a difference in the world, it's very hard to do that when you look just like it. Outside the ceremony, left-wing protesters objected to her appearance, attacking Turning Point USA and its conservative and traditional mission. That's unsurprising. They would kill her too if they had the chance, in my opinion. Erica Kirk, despite all of the online trolls and the haters, remains a steadfast example of grace and courage under fire, and how we should all handle tragedy by doubling down in our faith in Jesus Christ the Lord. Well, we've just found a new study that adds urgency to making America healthy again. There are now warnings that ultra-processed foods can be linked to a higher risk of dementia and other serious health problems. Researchers at Monash University in Australia found that a 10% daily increase in ultra-processed food consumption was associated with a higher risk of dementia, lower attention span, and more than 30 negative health outcomes. Lead author Dr. Barbara Cardoso said that 10% increase could be as little as 150 grams a day, roughly equivalent of adding a standard bag of chips to your daily diet. Other ultra-processed foods are industrial products made with refined ingredients, additives, and little whole food content. In the United States, these foods now make up about half of the calories that many Americans consume, while they're banned in many other nations across the world. Well, there go my beloved bologna sandwiches. The study also warned that simple eating healthy foods may not be enough to cancel out the damage from a diet loaded with processed junk. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has made reducing ultra-processed foods a major part of the Trump administration's Make America Healthy Again agenda. The new dietary guidelines for Americans emphasize a return to whole, nutrient-dense foods, including protein, dairy, vegetables, fruits, healthy fats, and whole grains. The previous food pyramid was a scam made up by the corporate food industry to maximize their profits while making the public both fatter and sicker as a result. The U.S. cannot subsidize this processed food any longer. Americans must go back to eating real food, healthy food, and Alzheimer's, cancer, health disease, diabetes, and virtually every other condition that plagues Americans at record rates will go naturally down as a result of a change in diet. As a Connecticut native, I must say I am particularly embarrassed by the two U.S. senators from Connecticut. See, I was born in the Norwalk Hospital. I grew up in New Canaan. The very first campaign I ever managed was for the state senate in the 26th district for a man named John Lupton. We beat the Republican establishment, went on to win the seat. Now, from the fabricated Russian collusion narrative to the two phony impeachments to his relentless defense of Obama's catastrophic 2015 Iran nuclear deal, Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy has been a consistent opponent of America's interests. He's one of the Senate's most vocal proponents for counting millions of illegal immigrants into the census. It is a deceitful and unconstitutional scheme that steals congressional seats and electoral votes from real American citizens. Connecticut Senator Murphy actively works to grant political power to millions who illegally crossed our southern border by counting them in the census. This scheme is effectively hands extra congressional seats and electoral college votes to blue states like California and New York, bypassing law-abiding citizens in red states. Far from protecting American sovereignty, Murphy celebrates it as some kind of brilliant political power grab. Senator Chris Murphy proves that feminism is nothing more than a selective political prop, while Iran literally stones women to death, hangs girls for wearing improper clothing, and treats them as property. Murphy has refused to get tough on the Ayatollahs. Instead, he viciously attacked President Trump's strikes against the regime, branding them as illegal, and has pushed war powers resolutions to try to limit America's response to the Iranian threats. In April of 2026, Murphy once again sparked outrage by replying, "Awesome," to reports that dozens of Iranian vessels had bypassed a U.S. naval blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. He later claimed it was sarcasm and doubled down on calling Trump's handling of the conflict a disaster. His rhetoric has been so soft on Tehran, it's embarrassing for somebody who's supposed to be a U.S. senator. Then in late 2019, as the first Trump impeachment intensified, Murphy rushed to Ukraine to spotlight Trump's Ukraine policy. At the same time, he showed very little interest in securing America's own borders or probing scandals that could implicate his own party. A longtime supporter of Ukraine, Murphy has made multiple trips to Kyiv, including the one with Senator John McCain in 2013 and 2014, and has pushed relentlessly for massive U.S. aid to packages. If you've ever seen the cities of Connecticut, if you've ever seen Hartford or Bridgeport, then you know that we should be putting America first, and that's where our money should be going, not into Kyiv. In 2020, when Hunter Biden's laptop story broke, filled with overwhelming evidence of lucrative foreign business dealings and bribery involving Biden's son and in FBI possession since December, Murphy and his Democrat colleagues quickly dismissed it all as Russian disinformation. This blatant hypocrisy revealed a clear pattern of weaponizing foreign narratives against Trump while shielding the Biden family from any real oversight or accountability. Elected in 2012 to represent my home state of Connecticut, Senator Chris Murphy is a foreign policy first establishment Democrat who's devoted more than a decade to one obsession, Trump. Since emerging as a serious political force, he's focused on sabotaging, smearing, and destroying Donald Trump by any means necessary. Instead of helping American families struggle under Biden-era inflation and record-high living costs, this slick establishment Democrat diligently works to viciously attack a president determined to enforce the law and drain the swamp. Senator Chris Murphy has been deliberate about undermining Americans' immigration laws as a leading champion of the U.S. Citizen Act and multiple amnesty-style reform bills. He aggressively pushes pathways to citizenship for millions of illegal immigrants while smearing strong border enforcement as cruel and inhumane. The only guy who's more embarrassing than Senator Chris Murphy is Senator Richard Blumenthal. Yes, Da Nang Dick, the guy who lied about his military service in Vietnam, a country he never even visited. I'm Roger Stone. Yes, I'm a nutmegger, and I'll be back on the other side with even more.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. Well, congressional redistricting, which was supposed to be a master plan of the Democrats, has boomeranged badly on their debilitated party. The Virginia Supreme Court delivered a brutal slap across the face of far-left extremists this past Friday, striking down their redistricting referendum that aimed to hijack Virginia's congressional map with one of the most egregious gerrymanders and thefts in American political history. What was previously a fair and competitive 6 Democrats, 5 Republican split would have been warped into an unbelievably unfair 10-1 Democrat stranglehold. The court ruled that the Democrat lawmakers shredded constitutional procedures in ramming through the amendment, declaring that the flawed process incurably taints the entire referendum and nullified it completely. Virginia's existing boundaries stay locked in for 2026. This fiasco was cheered on by Governor Abigail Spanberger and her Democrat allies. Spanberger, who's a former CIA operative, ran as a moderate but has emerged as a true radical By the way, her favorable rating has hit an all-time low. She has the lowest favorable rating of any governor in Virginia history at this moment. Despite Spanberger flat out lying to votes during her campaign, swearing she had no intention whatsoever of touching the state's congressional lines, she immediately moved to support this outrageous referendum, and her top Senate ally was not only on investigation but has now been arrested. The ballot language was a masterpiece of sophistry, deceptively asking voters to temporarily adopt new districts to restore fairness, when it was in actuality a naked power grab. Even with the campaign of deception, the referendum barely passed by just a 2-point margin in April. That's interesting because Republicans mounted virtually no effort here. They spent no money because they believed correctly that it would ultimately be determined to be unconstitutional. So the fact that it was this close is a bad sign for Democrats as they approach the 2026 elections. Now the state Supreme Court has declared that the nefarious scheme is unconstitutional. President Trump hailed the ruling as a huge win for the Republican Party in America that cannot be understated. Democrats tried to rig the system, violated the Constitution to do it, and now Virginia's highest court has called them to account. They get cocky, they overreached, and it's blowing up in their faces. After this ruling, it's clear the Democrats are losing this redistricting wars fight, and they're losing it badly. And that does not bode well for their chances heading into the midterms. Republicans, on the other hand, are dominating this fight nationwide. Through aggressive map drawing in red states, the Republicans stand to actually gain a net majority in Texas and Florida. Texas alone could deliver 5 additional Republican seats under its new map signed by Governor Greg Abbott. Florida's freshly approved map is poised to add 3 or 4 more Republican seats. Missouri will add 1. North Carolina, I think, will add another one, with potential games yet to be seen in Ohio, Tennessee, and elsewhere, pushing the Republican edge to roughly 8 or more net seats following the completed redraws. See, one of the problems for the Democrats is they have already gerrymandered the places where they're strong: Illinois, New York, California. President Trump was wise to understand that Republicans had a structural advantage in this mid-decade redistricting cycle, with maps in key states tilting towards the Republican Party, while Democrat counter-efforts, like the one that just flopped in Virginia, are collapsing under legal scrutiny. This puts House Republicans in a much stronger defensive position for 2026, raising their floor even in a potentially challenging midterm environment and making Democrats flip harder. This victory would never materialize without the fearless, visionary leadership of Donald Trump, with the cojones to upend the long-standing political traditions. President Trump refused to play by the weak-kneed rules that have hamstrung Republicans for decades. He showed the way forward. Fight hard, fight smart, and never apologize for winning. And through sheer force of personality and will, President Trump was able to drag most Republicans into battle they would never even have considered getting into otherwise. I'm Roger Stone. You've been listening to the Stone Zone. We're watching this congressional redistricting fight very closely, but with the Supreme Court decision last week saying that race cannot be considered as a factor, I say that the Republicans end up with a net 19 seats in the South alone. Until tomorrow, on the Stone Zone, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?